You've heard of the Titanic, and you've probably heard of the Ever Given, the container ship that blocked the Suez Canal for 6 days. But I bet all the change in my pocket, you've probably never heard of the Seawise Giant. And that's a problem, because this ship has a way of making them both look like child's play. From bow to stern, it stretched 1,504 feet, longer than 4 football fields, even longer than the Empire State Building is tall. What's more interesting is it's widely considered the largest moving object ever constructed by human hands. But here's the thing, that claim is not entirely accurate, and we're going to get into exactly why in a moment, because the real story of the Seawise Giant isn't about size. It's about war, fire, a sinking, a resurrection, and an ending nobody saw coming. So before we go any further, let's fact check that opening claim. You'll see the Seawise Giant described all over the internet as the largest ship, the largest moving object, the biggest thing ever built. And look, mostly that's true, but the full picture is a little more nuanced. Here's what it definitely holds the record for. The greatest deadweight tonnage ever recorded at 564,763 tons, and the longest self-propelled ship ever constructed at 458.45 meters. The largest overall? Well, in 2013, its length was surpassed by the Shell Prelude, a floating liquefied natural gas installation that stretches 488 meters, so that's 30 meters longer. So technically, the Seawise Giant is no longer the longest vessel ever built. Here's the catch though, since the Shell Prelude is a FLNG that isn't designed to sail anywhere under its own power, it just sits there, so most maritime experts don't count it as a ship in the traditional sense. So the most accurate thing we can say is this: it was the longest self-propelled ship ever to sail the open ocean, and the highest deadweight tonnage ever recorded, which honestly is still absolutely insane. But how did it get built? Well, it starts as many great stories do, with someone backing out of a deal. In 1974, Sumitomo Heavy Industries in Yokosuka, Japan received an order to build a massive supertanker. The buyer was a Greek shipping magnate. The ship didn't even have a name yet, it was just known by its hull number 1016. However, it was briefly named Apama during its early construction phase, a detail most people never hear about. Construction took 5 years, and when it was finally ready for sea trials in 1979, something went wrong. The ship exhibited several vibration problems while going astern, that is, while reversing. The Greek owner refused to take delivery, and the vessel became subject to a lengthy arbitration proceeding. So, there it sat, the most ambitious ship ever attempted, just waiting in a Japanese shipyard with no owner and no name. Then came C.Y. Tung. Tung Chao-yung was the founder of Hong Kong's Orient Overseas Container Line and the father of the city's first chief executive. He had a vision, and he wasn't content with what was already an enormous ship. Tung bought the vessel and commissioned a process called jumboization, essentially bolting an entirely new section onto the hull, which added over 80 meters in length and 146,000 tons of extra cargo capacity. Then, he gave it a name. Seawise, a deliberate pun on his initials CY. He used the same wordplay across other ships he owned, like the Seawise University. In 1981, the ship was relaunched as Seawise Giant, now at its full deadweight tonnage of 564,763 tons, the largest self-propelled vessel ever to enter the water, and it had a job to do. The Seawise Giant was built for one purpose: hauling staggering quantities of crude oil across the world's oceans. And for 7 years, that's exactly what it did, mostly running routes between the Middle East and the United States. But operating something this size came with serious limitations. With a fully laden draft of 24.6 meters, the ship was physically incapable of navigating the English Channel, the Suez Canal, or the Panama Canal. It had to take the long way around everywhere, rounding the Cape of Good Hope at the tip of southern Africa just to get from one ocean to the other. Its top speed was only around 16 knots. Fully loaded, it took nearly 6 miles to stop and more than 2 miles to complete a turn. You didn't drive the ship so much as you pointed it in a direction and planned ahead. Way ahead. The deck alone covered nearly 340,000 square feet. Crew members used bicycles just to get from one end to the other. Individual components were almost comically massive: a 230-ton rudder, a 50-ton propeller, and an anchor chain links heavier than a car. And yet, for its size, the entire crew numbered just 40 people. 40 people were responsible for a vessel longer than the entire state building is tall. For 7 years, it operated without major incident. Then 1988 arrived. By the mid-1980s, the Persian Gulf had become one of the most dangerous stretches of water on the planet. The tanker war, part of the broader Iran-Iraq conflict, was a sustained campaign by both nations to attack each other's oil shipping. Iraq alone carried out 283 attacks on vessels between 1981 and 1988. Any ship moving oil in or out of the region was a potential target. On May 14, 1988, the Seawise Giant was anchored at Larak Island, an Iranian offshore oil terminal, fully loaded with Iranian crude, when Iraqi warplanes struck. Iraqi jets evaded Iranian defenses and fired French-made Exocet missiles at the supertanker as it sat anchored, described by witnesses as like a sitting duck. The ship erupted in fire and the spilled oil around her was burning. By late afternoon, the vessel was still blazing out of control. The crew abandoned ship, and reports vary on casualties, but at least one sailor was killed and many more were initially unaccounted for. And here's where a popular myth needs correcting. Contrary to many internet reports, the vessel didn't fully sink to the ocean floor. It remained partially afloat and was later recovered. Images of the burnt out but still afloat hull have been published online. It drifted, burned, and was eventually declared a constructive total loss, meaning it was so badly damaged that repair costs would exceed the ship's total value. So the attack was part of Iraq's broader campaign to blockade Iranian oil exports. The Seawise Giant, neutral flagged and simply in the wrong place at the wrong time, was caught directly in the crossfire. Its owners wrote it off. The world's longest ship was gone, or so everyone thought. The war ended in August 1988. The burned out hull of the Seawise Giant sat where it had been left, a wreck declared worthless, but a Norwegian consortium called Norman International saw something others didn't. In 1989, they purchased the damaged vessel and towed it to Singapore for a complete rebuild. Some 3,700 tons of new steel were replaced in the process. The vessel re-entered service in October 1991 under a new name, Happy Giant. The same year, Norwegian shipping magnate Jørgen Jahre purchased the tanker for $39 million and renamed her Jahre Viking. She was back, under a Norwegian flag, with a new engine system, sailing again. She operated for another decade before the economics of the oil industry caught up with her. By the early 2000s, massive slow tankers had fallen out of favor. 2004, she was converted into a floating storage and offloading unit and renamed Nevis. In December 2009, she was renamed one final time, Mont, for her last voyage to the Langsua shipbreaking yards in India. Even dismantling the ship was an epic task, reportedly requiring 18,000 laborers and taking over a year to complete. One piece survived. As of November 2025, the ship's anchor is on public display at the newly opened Anchor Plaza outside Piers 9 and 10 of Central Ferry Pier in Hong Kong. So, was the Seawise Giant the largest moving object ever built? Well, largely, yes. The longest self-propelled ship in history, the highest deadweight tonnage ever recorded, a vessel so massive that 40 people needed bicycles to manage it, that took 6 miles to stop, and had survived a missile attack from Saddam Hussein's Air Force only to sail for another 2 decades. Is it technically the largest? Well, the records are complicated, but the most extraordinary ship to ever sail the open ocean? That one's up for debate, but it has my vote. Remember to hit that like button and subscribe for more videos like this. I'm Tristan, and I'll see you in the next one.